The Avengers came out 10 years ago, and I would remember. If you ask me what is the first movie I remember seeing in theaters, the answer is actually pretty obvious. Madagascar 2. Okay, that doesn't really count because I only remember seeing parts of that movie in the theater, but the first movie that I remember truly being ecstatic for and anticipating, can't waiting to see, was The Avengers. This movie was the coolest thing ever to me. I mean, man, the hype was there. I remember begging my parents to take me to this movie, and finally going with my mom. I'm in the theater, loving the movie, and I will never forget this scene where Iron Man falls out of Stark Tower, his suit deploys after him, and right as he's about to fall, he's got 1 second, his armor's completely around him, and his faceplate is about to clamp down, and he's staring right into the camera, and it felt like time had stopped. Tony Stark was looking at 7-year-old me in the theater, and all I was feeling was pure happiness. It was the greatest thing I'd ever seen, and being able to create a moment like that is truly special. You could say I have nostalgia, or that was my dumb little brain that over-exaggerated what it was actually like, but this movie was truly amazing, and I think it is actually a very impressive feat of how well it executes just being a fun superhero action blockbuster, and I want to break down why it is. It was a pioneer in the film industry, and as every franchise afterwards was trying to figure out how to be this movie, and not all of them successfully. But this movie is amazing, and I want to explore why and how this movie holds up still 10 years later. First off, we have to admit this movie had a lot of stuff going for it, especially the 5 movies that came before it in the MCU. The majority of the setup for this movie is set up by those 5 previous films, which are Iron Man 1 and 2, Captain America, Hulk, and Thor. Yet when I saw this movie for the first time when I was just a kid, I hadn't seen any of the MCU movies. But this movie is really interesting for the MCU because you don't really need to see anything else in the MCU for you to be able to follow this movie. It completely works at introducing you to every single character, and yeah, watching the previous ones allows you to know more about the characters and shows them on a more complex level, but you don't need to see those other movies to understand this movie. And there's something really special about that now that we're getting MCU movies that kind of want you to see 7 different movies to only see 1 sequel to Spider-Man. That simplicity is actually really neat, and it's cool to see that this movie just works on its own. But what truly makes this movie so special is its characters. All of these characters are absolutely great. Even if people joke about Black Widow and Hawkeye being duds, they really aren't, and we'll get back to that. The main duo that the movie really shows off is Iron Man and Captain America, and their dynamic that is in this movie is absolutely amazing. And while the MCU movies have been alright before, like the previous MCU movies aren't horrible, the interaction of these characters is the light bulb that goes off while you're watching this movie because the dialogue and character interaction in this movie is amazing. I am not selling it short when I say that it is a revelation at the potential that these movies have when you put these superstar actors together and just let them banter. Now, for some people, that quippy dialogue that is really fast with one-liners flying left and right isn't everyone's speed, but I think for this film it really works. Once you get on and feel out how the type of rhythm is in the dialogue, it clicks. This movie is written by Joss Whedon and Zach Penn. Now, Joss Whedon these days has been basically public enemy #1 on Twitter for screwing up Justice League. And while I'm not going to defend him for that, I am going to say that I really do like his dialogue here, and it's really good. He is a good writer. He has written really good things like the show Firefly, he's written some really good X-Men comics, and he even helped write Toy Story. Also, here you got Zach Penn, who wrote X-Men 2, Last Action Hero. Looks like he doesn't exactly have the greatest resume, but hey, this movie's good, right? These writers do a good job of creating a story that has a ton of awesome, cool fights and moments that make the audience cheer, along with creating moments like characters just talking in between that are just as interesting as the giant spectacle. Doing that is way harder than it sounds like. Like, look at the most recent Godzilla movies. Everyone says, just get rid of the humans because the human characters are terrible, and I just want to see Godzilla. And you want to know why that is? It's because the characters that are humans suck. All of their scenes are terrible, and that could have been exactly the same for the Avengers. But the Avengers never has that problem. You are always glued to the screen because you know if you are not keeping up with the movie, it will leave you behind because there are zingers left and right, and that goes on to further the dynamics between the characters. Now, you might be thinking this movie sounds way too dialogue heavy, but it really isn't. Dialogue is fantastic, but it is also complemented with excellent action and set pieces. Don't forget that this movie is some of the most cool and most innovative framing and execution of superhero action ever. The action in this movie is incredible, and there are probably 5 different awesome shots that look like they are straight out of comic books. This movie is so radly shot, and it truly pioneered the capabilities of what a superhero movie could be. No other comic book movie had been on the same scale as this movie. This movie was truly huge and was kind of the only movie like it in its own field, where this movie is a lot of just pure spectacle, but it never feels empty. You want to take a detour right now? Okay, let's take a little break real quick. I enjoy the Transformers films. They are these crazy, super insane, bombastic movies. Maybe I'll review them someday. But the action in these movies is so crazy, it becomes numbing at a certain point due to the fact that you don't always care about these people in these crazy moments. Like, look at this scene. What is happening? Who is this? What is going on? Like, I don't know. It's a cool moment, probably a cool storyboard, but I feel nothing because I don't know what's happening or who this is. When you have huge spectacle, you do run the risk at losing audience investment in the characters. Avengers, though, kind of skips over this problem. It is so good at making us care about these characters in these crazy situations. There is some true tension in this movie. As much as Black Widow and Hawkeye are the butts of jokes, one of the best scenes of tension in this movie is when Hawkeye's up on that rooftop scrambling. He has no clue what to do in that epic scramble to get an arrow and jumping off. Ooh, it's so good. And then he crashes into a building and gets hurt. As a kid, I went, yes, that is what should happen. You get hurt when you crash through glass. It raises the stakes because you realize these guys are mortal. They can die. Same with when you see Cap in a building and a grenade's about to go off and he really is struggling to get it out. It really makes you feel like these characters are in danger. And even the characters that are stronger have more monumental tasks. Thor must fight the main villain Loki. He loses. Hulk has to take out one of these behemoth space whales, and it's straight up crazy. Then we have Tony, aka Iron Man, the most vain and self-centered of the group that we see in the entire movie. Is the one that will always do whatever for himself, is the one that has to grab the nuke and fly it into space, knowing that there's a chance this is the last thing he does. Oh my gosh, this movie's so good. Also, Iron Man's the best character in the MCU, and he'll never be best. This film understands that in order for a film that is this big not to turn into a bloated mess of aliens and superheroes, that there needs to be characters that are set up and relatable that you're invested in. You have these absolutely great actors who absolutely own the roles that they have and make every line amazing and believable. Not for a second do you not see these characters. Every moment you see the character and you don't see the actor. It's amazing. The casting in this movie is so good. Do you know how bad this movie would be if Captain America was played like by Sam Worthington instead of Chris Evans? It's so hard to imagine because all the actors here are perfect for the roles. Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Hawkeye, Black Widow, Thor, Agent Coulson, Nick Fury, Loki. Every character, you understand their purpose, what drives them, what spectrum of the moral compass they're aligned with. You have this huge cast with a huge scale in this movie, and the film has to juggle all of it, and it works beautifully. There are no bad characters, no bad sequences, no part that I just want to skip. This movie is so tight. I have said constantly, that is way better for a movie to be too short than too long. I like how I act like I know when I've never said this before. That said, a lot of the success of this movie being so tight is a product of the framework of the story being so good. You get a really well-paced film that goes from villain being introduced to introducing each member of the team, then they all come together and we're able to see how they interact before they actually have to go into action together. It just is absolutely seamless and leads to a film that is just one of the most fun movies due to the fact that it feels like every scene is progressing the plot. We always have momentum. Scene 1 leads into scene 2 and so forth. Avengers was my modern day Star Wars. It is an incredibly well made and tight movie that introduces all these characters and puts them together and just is an absolute blast. And just like Star Wars, the movies after Avengers in the MCU went on to cover the dark after effects, but the original Avengers movie is just this super fun, bombastic, well made movie that stands the test of time that you can always go back to. It's so good. Even Endgame spent a significant portion of its film in this movie. The new Doctor Strange movie coming out, there will be 28 movies from Marvel Studios in the MCU. Avengers, though, is still in my top 5 that they've ever put out. This movie isn't perfect. I mean, sometimes lighting could be better. Maybe they could have incorporated Loki's plans and development a little better with less exposition dumps. And if he's working for Thanos, why would he give him a stone to get another stone? So yes, this movie isn't perfect, and some of those flaws might hold it back from being a 10 out of 10 masterpiece, but that doesn't account for all the things that this movie does right. We're so quick to review movies and look at the few things in a 2-hour runtime it does wrong instead of pointing out how much in that amount of time it does right. This is one of the most fun and well executed movies I have seen, and I usually watch this movie every year, and this movie to me as a kid was the coolest thing ever. And even 10 years later, where I'm more critical and more jaded, it still is this amazing movie that really awakens my inner child in me and just reminds me of how fun movies can be. This movie had all the ingredients just to be a massive success. It had the right director coming off projects like Firefly that completely relied on good dialogue, which led for this dialogue to be great. This movie brings in these excellent actors with really fun characters that go on to become household names due to how well they're able to interact with each other while also having some of the coolest action scenes that we had ever seen in a superhero movie. This movie has super tight pacing, a great feeling of momentum that makes it truly feel like a roller coaster like every time you watch it. This movie is giving a masterclass on how to make a huge, fun superhero blockbuster that has close to no fat. It's able to be a true crowd pleaser while also being truly amazing. With all the new movies that come out, this movie might get lost in the shuffle down the road in the comic book movie genre, but I hope it isn't. It truly was a landmark of its time, ushering in a new era of comic book movies, and you might love that or you might hate that. Personally, I'm a huge fan of it. I think this film, though, is truly special on its own and a true landmark in the superhero comic book genre. The Avengers is fun being executed on a huge, incredible scale. It is still, 10 years later, an absolutely amazing film, completely holds up, and that is why The Avengers is amazing. By the way, before I go, I just want to let you guys know that I have a few more videos coming out real quick. I have that Batman, all the comic book reviews. I just had to be reading through them. It's like 8 books, and I have a lot going on, so I haven't been able to get through all those just yet. Almost done. That video will be out soon. Keep your eyes posted for those videos, and when those come out, I'll see you then. Bye.